Hello and welcome to another weekly update. I don't know what the weather's like where you are, but here it's one of those lovely sunny January days, or February days I suppose, because I think we're 1st of February now. One of those sunny days, kind of not too cold, and especially in here, which is like a glass room conservatory, it's warmed up really nice. So a couple of interesting things to talk about this week. The first, so I did a video earlier this week, for UC Summit, so ucsummit.com, I want to say. Yep, ucsummit.com. It's like an online conference. It's a really good idea. It's a collection of information, some of it unique, some of it recorded at other conferences and sessions, and it's all in one place and it's all UC focused. So some really good, it's not just Microsoft, it's across the whole board, so there's loads of really interesting things in there. But I did a session for them. It was my 5 tips for migrating line of business applications over to Microsoft Teams. And this isn't purely a developer session. It's a mix actually of developer and non-developer. So it starts off more on the non-developer side of the scale and moves over. So by the end of the 5th tip is kind of fairly full-on developer ideas. So you can kind of either pick all the tips or you can kind of stop if it falls, the wrong side of the things that you're comfortable doing. So that's good. So that's on YouTube. You can go and find it. If you go to ucsummit.com and go looking there, you'll find it, and you'll also find lots of other really good sessions as well. Good. So what else has been happening this week? So a couple of blog posts that have come from Microsoft around Teams in different kind of areas, which I thought was interesting. The first is around Firstline Workers. And it's by Jared Spataro. So if you didn't remember or you didn't know, I actually spoke to Jared. So he's a CVP for Microsoft 365. I spoke to him at Ignite. We sat down. We had a great interview. You can find it at fullstop.co.uk/videos if you're interested. Anyway, this blog post is around Firstline Workers and search. And there's a couple of different things he's called out here. The first is the new walkie-talkie feature, which we've talked about on here before, which is kind of interesting. And then also some kind of sign-in optimizations. And it's all benefiting Firstline Workers. So it's all aimed at driving Firstline Workers. And this is a real kind of drumbeat we're starting to hear from Microsoft around Microsoft 365 and Teams as well. But the whole Microsoft 365 suite is geared and optimized and improvements to address the needs of first-line workers, which I think is really interesting. I think it's the right thing to do, by the way. I think there's a big gap in what's around for first-line workers. I really do. If you think about it, those people are very, very important to your business. For many businesses, those people are the only interactions that the public has with your brand. And yet they don't tend to have their own machines. They definitely don't have their own desks. They're out on the floor all the time. They tend to share devices. They often share logins. It's a very fractured experience. So it's really good and interesting to see Microsoft taking some steps in this area. The other interesting thing about this blog post, and the reason I'm kind of linking it, is it turns out Jared and someone called Alex Bradley, they are starting a podcast. I'm not saying Jared's starting a podcast, like he is on the first version of the podcast. I'm not entirely sure if they're doing it or like if it's just something Alex is doing and Jared's the visitor number 1 or guest number 1. But it's interesting. So there's a new podcast starting up. It's called What's New to Microsoft 365. I think. Let's have a look. It's called the Modern Workplace Podcast. Sorry. It's called the Modern Workplace Podcast, and the first episode is called Productivity from the Top Floor to the Shop Floor. Interesting. So you'll be able to find that wherever your podcasts come from. I thought that was interesting. New podcasts are always worth keeping an eye out for. Interesting. Very interesting. There's a whole, actually, I'll put a link to this in as well. There's a whole season of videos. That's what this website is calling them, around Modern Workplace. So bear with me. This is a Modern Workplace landing page for a webcast series, but it's got a trailer. It says watch the season 6 trailer. So I'll put a link to that because that sounds very interesting. I wouldn't have thought Modern Workplace. I mean, I'm into Modern Workplace, I get it, but like, I'm not sure it's movie material. But let's find out. All right, so what else have we got? Oh yeah, so this is interesting as well. It's the turn of the month, so it's January into February, so it's time for another What's New in Microsoft Teams blog post that comes out of the Teams team. And it's a good roundup of all the things that have happened recently that you may have missed. And there's some things in there, some features, some devices stuff. And I tend to scan it, and if there's anything interesting for developers, I might include it, I might talk about it. Interesting this month, they include saying that the cloud communications APIs are now available. So for me, they've been available for a while, and I think they've been GA for quite a long time as well. I remember talking about a blog post that they linked to, actually. So they say this is new, and they say it's available now, and then they link to a blog post from December last year. So there we go. Talking about how the cloud communication APIs are now GA. It's worth digging into these if you've not before. I've talked about them before, the capabilities. There are some things that have changed slightly as it's going from beta to GA though as well. There's some restrictions on some things. So the most obvious one that I'm going to call out because I noticed it is online meetings. There's an API call you can make to go and make a Teams meeting, just generate a Teams meeting. You don't have to tie it to an Outlook schedule or anything. It's almost like an ad hoc meeting. And you can do that in an API call, and you'll get back a join link, you'll get back the dial-in information and all that stuff. Right now, that has to be done in user scope, so delegated permissions. You can't do it on behalf of a user you have to do it on behalf of a user. You can't do it as an application, so without a user being present, basically. Which feels like an oversight. It's annoying. It's an annoyance. It's something that was there in the beta. It might just be a timing thing. I don't know. But it's just it's one of those things. And actually looking around, I noticed it's the same on the presence one as well. So you also there's no application scope for getting presence. So it's not a bad thing, and there's definitely ways around it. It's just something to be aware of if you're using these APIs for solutions. Just make sure you've got the permissions that you need for the kind of workload you're doing, or maybe you need to think about the auth flow as well. Maybe you need to make it slightly different to how you had it planned, or something like that. So I'll put a link to that in as well, so you can kind of catch up on that and see the capabilities of all these new APIs. All right, I think that's everything from me. What is happening? It feels like lots is happening. So we're going into February. That means conference season is going to start up again. I'm going to be talking right at the start of next month at Microsoft Ignite the Tour in Switzerland. So you can catch me there if you're going to be there. Then it's MVP Summit, and then we're into kind of conferences as well. There's there's Commsverse coming up in April. And then there's some more kind of further out from that I can't remember because they feel like a long time ago, a long way away. So we'll see. So it's starting to gear up again, coming out of winter. We're over Christmas, and all the exciting stuff's starting to ramp up again, which is excellent news. All right, that's everything from me. Have a great weekend, and I will talk to you again next time.